Hello, and welcome to another day at the Nook. I got a couple of different odds and ends that I'd like to get accomplished today, including up-potting some plants. And throughout this video, I'm going to do a Q&A where I'm going to answer some of the more recent questions that I've gotten in the comments. But before we even get to that, I got some new fluorescent grow tubes. This fixture right here, this is the one I had the longest. It's the first one I got. It's over 3 years old. So I removed all 6 tubes, and I'm going to just replace the 2 ends with brand new ones. We'll come back to this one. Now, these were the next 2 fixtures that I got. This one right here and that one, which is directly underneath this large pot I have here on the floor. And once I get this all planted up, I'm gonna have a hard time changing them. So I'm putting 4 new tubes into that fixture. And I was going to put 2 new tubes, one at each end in here, but I just opened them up and one's broke. So 4 new tubes in this fixture directly over this large pot. This is actually a outdoor pond liner that I brought in the house, filled it with some potting mix, and eventually this will be a large indoor garden in here. And this is just some recycled potting mixes that I had from last year. I'm just throwing it in there right now and replacing some of the volume that I lost due to it settling. But once this all gets planted up, I'm gonna have a hard time changing these tubes. That's why this one got 4 brand new tubes. This one, I only replaced the one that was farthest over to the end there. That's a brand new tube. And then this one's my largest fixture. It holds 6 tubes. Both of the ends are new tubes, and the 4 that I replaced in the middle are a lot newer than the ones that I removed. All the ones that were removed from here and the one that was blown out, I just discarded. Right now, I'm just going to spread this topsoil here, or potting mix. I'm going to spread it around inside of this pot. So one of the questions that I actually get asked quite a bit is whether or not I use the water from my fish tanks to water my plants when I do a water change. And yes, I do. I'm also asked if it really is beneficial, and it is, because there's nutrients within the water column that your plants will use. Now, I don't dose my tanks with fertilizers or any other kind of chemicals like algicides or anything like that. If I was dosing with a fertilizer, that would be fine. I don't know about other types of chemicals, like for instance, algicides. You'd have to look it up and see. Well, whatever you're putting in there, is that safe to use on your plants? I really don't know. But if you're not putting any kind of chemicals into your water, yeah, totally safe and beneficial for your plants. I don't exclusively use that water to water my plants because I go through so much water, but instead of just dumping it down the drain or outside, I do recycle the water and give it to my plants. Well, eventually I'll be adding some of this material as it becomes available to me all the way through here. But so I want the soil a little bit higher. It did settle quite a bit after I originally put it in here. Right now, what I'm going to do, this plant right here, I believe it's a neon pothos. This is the mother plant up here. The vines had grown all the way down and made contact with the soil. And after they began to root, I cut the vine over here. I just cut that vine right there. This is all rooted now. Like I can see roots. I'm pulling it out, but it is rooted. That's replanted. Just pulled it out. But what I'm going to do right now is I am just going to go through and make a couple cuts in the vine. Everywhere I just made a cut, it will grow a whole new vine. I'll make one here too. This plant's not ready for me to do this yet, but it is rooting in. Eventually I'm going to make cuts all the way around. And the nice thing too, by putting a plant right on the soil like this, a vine right on the soil so it can root in, there are spots over here. Let's see if I can find one. Right here's one. So this is actually a node. This is a node that had lost its leaf, but it will still grow a root out of there and a new vine. I gotta go. I just fed him. My cat, come here, Ollie. My cat, whenever I'm on the phone or I got the camera, he knows to be loud. He knows to, to get my attention because he's going to get a treat or he's going to get something so that he'll be quiet. I just fed him, so he didn't do this. So it's not because he's hungry. He's trained me very well. That's what it is. The cat's actually pretty cool. He does do a few tricks. I've showed a few of them. He does do a few tricks, but he'll also go by his litter box and just meow and meow and meow until I come and clean it. And I'll clean the litter box and he don't even use it. He just walks away. He'll do that by his water dish too. If he wants his water dish cleaned, even though he has water, he wants it cleaned. He's trained me. That's what it is. He trained me very well. So I'm going to go give him some treats so he leaves us alone for this video. Let's move along now into the other room and we'll start up potting some of these plants. I got some cacti as well as some succulents that have been given to me over time. They're all still in the original pots, so they really do need to get up potted. They're right here. Now, this is definitely a cactus right here. This one right here. And not too sure about this one. The rest I do believe are just succulents. Got an aloe plant right here. Going to be putting them into larger pots. So all of these plants here do require very well and fast draining soil. What I have is some cactus, palm and citrus, fast draining potting mix, Miracle-Gro. Really what this is, it's just really fine peat moss. It's really fine peat moss with a little bit of sand in it. And to this, I'm going to add a little bit of extra perlite. There is a little bit of perlite in here, not much. Another question that I have been asked quite a few times is whether or not I dechlorinate my water before I water my plants, and I do not. There's a couple of reasons for that. One, I have well water, so there is no chlorine in my water. But even if I did get my water from a municipality that added chlorine, I still would not let that water sit out overnight to allow the chlorine to be able to evaporate out of the water. The amount of chlorine that is added to drinking water is higher than what is required to disinfect the water so it's safe for us to drink it. However, that number is still really, really low compared to how much chlorine a plant requires as a nutrient. Plants do require chlorine as a nutrient, and in all-purpose fertilizers, you'll see that it's in there. But the amount that they put into drinking water is not sufficient to meet the needs of the plant, nor would it ever harm the plant. Also, if you're dechlorinating your water, there's another chemical that a lot of municipalities use instead of chlorine. I forget what it's called. I'll put it in text right now. So this chemical, a lot of municipalities will use this instead of chlorine because it does not evaporate. So if this is what your municipality's putting into your water and you're trying to dechlorinate your water before using it, it's not gonna happen. It doesn't evaporate. So all of these plants, I do believe, were given to me. Cactus and succulents. Well, actually, I do have quite a few succulents, but none of these plants that I pick out myself. They were all donated to me. This is the one that I'm going to up pot first. And I do not know the names of these, but they are succulents and or cacti which need well-draining soil. I'm going to put this in this pot here because it's larger. Cacti and succulents, their root structures have been designed over time so that they will rapidly absorb and store moisture. And you do want the soil to completely, for most cacti, well, all cacti I would assume, but most succulents too. There are a few exceptions. Always look your plant up, but they like to thoroughly dry out in between watering. Like that's completely bone dry, but that's fine. They actually need that. So these plants have not been up potted, and I think a lot of these plants are like 3 years old. I got these plants donated to me shortly after I started the plant room. And I really don't want them, and I'm going to give them away as gifts. But first I want to up pot them and just watch and see what happens over time. It's really surprising how quickly plants can start to put new growth and stuff on them after they get up potted, especially if they haven't been up potted in quite some time. Now with cacti and succulent, you don't really press the soil in. You don't make it real firm. You leave it nice and light, give it a good watering, and that will push everything down for you. You want it to stay light. You don't want to really, compact this soil. And this one's been in front of a window for a very long time. So you see how it's all kind of growing out in this direction. When I put this back in front of the window, let's say this is the window, the side the camera's on, I'm going to put it in front of the window like this next to make it more fuller. So now this is a cacti. I'm going to do this one next right here. Now I made some cuttings with a pair of scissors in areas like right where this new piece is growing off. I made some cuttings 2 days ago. So I made a cut, let it wait 2 days so it forms a nice callus there, and then we'll be planting this. And you want larger pieces. Like this piece might be a little too small. It still might be fine, but it broke off. It was on here. I didn't cut it, but it broke off, and I got several pieces that we're going to plant into a new pot for, a larger pot. In cacti and most succulents, they do not get very large root structures. You might have heard me say in other videos, if you want your plant to grow faster and get bigger quicker, put it in a larger pot when you're up potting. Well, larger than what you normally might think of as just going up one pot size, an inch or two. I'll say put it in a larger pot because if the plant's been in a small pot for quite a while and you put it into a larger pot, it's real rapidly going to grow and the root structure is going to fill in that new pot, and you'll have to up pot it relatively quicker. So just put it in an even larger pot, and it will just grow a lot faster. You get more growth off of it quicker. But these types of plants here, they don't really require a very large root structure because they absorb the water so quick. So you really don't need, or you won't have much benefit by putting it into such a large pot. And the larger pots are also beneficial because they'll hold more moisture. And these plants, you don't want the pot to hold a lot of excess moisture, which is why I'm using a product it's primarily peat moss, but it has a little bit of sand in it. And I added extra perlite. I want it to dry quick. I want it to drain fast and to dry out quicker. I'm just smoothing the soil out. I'm not pushing it down like I would with some of the other tropical varieties I usually work with. Now, after doing this, I'm going to remove a little of this. Actually, I forgot I have some stones that I'm going to be top dressing to make it look a little nicer, so when I give them away, they look better. We'll be doing that later. But now that I got this in here, I'm going to take these cuttings, and I'm probably only going to plant maybe a third of this piece down, and it will start to grow roots. I'll put some of those stones in it now. The first thing I'm going to do is give it a little water. Now, this plant here, because I had these cuttings in here, I will be coming through every few days and just giving it a couple squirts right at the bottom there to help promote new root growth down there for it. And after about maybe 3-4 weeks, I'll just go to watering it as normal. Now I got some decorative stones here, river pebbles, and I think the color kind of matches the terracotta, just so it looks nicer when I give them away. And I'm actually giving them back to the same person I got them from. It was my daughter-in-law when she moved. When my daughter-in-law moved, she gave me a bunch of her plants. A lot of the plants that are here I got from her, and I propagated them, and I'm slowly giving them back to her. I've also been asked if I water my plants with RO water or distilled water. Well, RO water has all the nutrients and minerals and any chemicals stripped out of it. It's just pure water. Water's good for our plants. You need to give them water, but they also want those nutrients and minerals and stuff that's naturally in water. So I would never water my plants with distilled water or RO water. Distilled water is basically purified water that is boiled and the steam is collected, and then that steam, is what distilled water is. You're basically just drinking steam, but there's no added nutrients or minerals in there, so I wouldn't use that on my plants. I've also been asked what would I recommend, distilled water or mineral water as far as cleaning the leaves. I use distilled water because the minerals have been removed. I wouldn't want to use mineral water because when that water evaporates, those minerals would be left on the leaf. And if you are familiar with my channel, I love clean, shiny leaves. So I use distilled water. And then my leaves are shiny because I use neem oil to wipe them down also. And, it's not the distilled water that's making my leaves so shiny. It's the neem oil. Now, yeah, I'm using a fancy bag. I'm calling it a fancy bag because it's saying it's specifically for cactus and palm. I just had this, so that's what I'm using up. You could just use peat moss, any kind of peat moss, or coco coir. You don't have to use any fancy brand or anything. The peat moss and or coco coir, that's just to hold the moisture for a little bit as well as the nutrients. So you need some of that material in here for that purpose. And then the perlite is just to help aerate and to drain the soil and to help it dry out quicker. Don't have to use fancy products for stuff. Literally on the back of that package, this product that I used in that bag is just finely ground peat moss with some sand and a real little bit of perlite. You can buy some cheap peat moss or coco coir, get some perlite added in. That's really all you need. You could sprinkle a little sand in there too. That would be fine. It's the same with fertilizers. You don't have to use a succulent or a cacti fertilizer for your succulents or your cacti. I've said this many times. I'm going to say it again. All plants use the exact same nutrients and in the exact same way. If you go to the store and you look up what nutrients are actually in these individual types of fertilizers for specific types of plants, and you look that up, the amounts and the types of nutrients that are in there, they're almost exactly the same. I use a Miracle-Gro all-purpose fertilizer for everything. The thing about the plants and their requirements for nutrients is that every function that the plant goes through, be it new foliage, flowers, growing out roots, repairing damaged leaves, regulating its hormones or its pheromones. Every one of those are a different function, and each function will require a whole variety of nutrients. Each function will be using the same types of nutrients as other functions, just in different amounts. And the plant is not always going to be engaging in the exact same functions at the same time. A plant will be engaging in several different functions using a whole host of different types of nutrients. You don't have to provide the plant with the nutrients that it needs when it needs it, because the plant will store and hold on to extra nutrients that it's not using at the time. And then when the plant does require those nutrients, it will use those nutrients that it has previously stored when it needs them. Just remember, an all-purpose fertilizer will have all the different types of nutrients that a plant requires. So here they are. And you see the size pots that they were originally in. They did get into bigger pots. That one's a small pot. Or this one right here. And we propagated it as well. And over here, look how little this pot was compared to that one. And that's why, now if you look at this plant, I don't have another example to show you, but this plant is dehydrated. You can see that it should be nice, fat, and plump. It's a succulent, but it's dehydrated, and that was because it was in this size pot, and the soil level only came up to here. And even though I tried watering it before I made this video, there just wasn't enough peat moss in that to hold on to the water for it to be able to absorb it. But now that we've added more peat moss, a greater volume of peat moss into larger pots, there'll be some moisture being retained for a little while. That's the reason for the peat moss. But these will all be given away as gifts. That stone that I added into the top, I just had that here for quite a long time. I thought I was going to use it in the fish tank. Still probably will. I got several containers of them, but I think it really helped it to look nicer.